This week on our book series, it is a part 2 of the Wicked book by Gregory Maguire that came out in 1995, and this is a continuation. So if you want to see video 1, part 1, check it out. I'll link it down below or wherever I can link it on the screen. Or you can just go to my channel and you'll see the first video. The Wicked book is about the Wicked Witch of the West, her backstory. Her name is Elphaba, and she in fact was born green. She was born to a priest and a type of baroness. Her father's name was Frex and her mother's name was Melina. And we learned that Frex might not even be the father. Her mom is kind of living her hot girl life, and he might not even be the father, and she is viewed by her father as a curse or a punishment from the unnamed god. Because he is a priest, he views her as a punishment for not being able to save the townspeople from pleasure faith, which is just entertainment that is now starting to come to Oz because of like technological advancement. He wasn't able to kind of like save his people, and he views Elphaba as a type of curse or punishment, while her mother doesn't really care. It's still just shocking that she has a green daughter, but it's clear to us, the audience, that the author wants us to see this as, is this a punishment for being a wayward wife, an adulterer? That's what we're getting from Elphaba. There is a man named Turtleheart who comes and asks the family for lodging because he's on his way to Emerald City to talk to the people in charge, and he's stopping in Munchkinland for a day and needs, you know, a place to stay. So he ends up staying, but longer than his stay was supposed to be. He's very welcome there, which is why he ends up staying long, and that's that. And we end off with the family leaving, deciding they're gonna leave to Quadling Land, which is where Turtleheart is from, because Frex sees it as an opportunity to be a type of missionary to the people, because it's kind of known as like the dark lands of Oz. So that is where we stopped, and Elphaba was just a baby. And before they left, she had ended up doing some, Turtleheart did a prediction or a vision of the Wizard of Oz that we know from the movie and stuff coming to Oz, because he's not originally from there, and bringing terrible things. And this was actually important, I didn't mention in the first video, but the way power works, like government worked, before the wizards showed up, it was a royalist society. So there were kings, queens, princesses, and stuff like that. And there, in any society, whether it's royal democracy, there's always going to be the struggle for power. So of course, people hills and stuff like that. There was actually a new baby going to be born, and the baby would grow up to rule Oz. But the wizard comes, and actually the people of Oz were waiting for a coup. They really did not like this royal society does. And he gives them the opportunity with all of his technological advances from wherever he's from. I would assume it's from our human world. You know, Dorothy was like from Kansas. I would assume he's from our human world. With his technological advances, he was able to help the people who were against royalists, or just like having some type of, you know, royal over them, and to create a type of democracy. But you see that it's not really that either. He becomes a tyrant as well. So this is a time skip. Oh, and also the baby, we don't know what happens to the baby who was supposed to rule Oz. There are predictions that the wizard froze her in a cave for all time, that he has her locked up somewhere, or that he's actually K-worded her. But we'll never know. Seriously, they never tell us in this book. He's given this part too. You're gonna hate him. He's given asshole, but I think in the movies too, he, like, the whole point is he's not as great as everyone says he is. It's all about the mechanics. Like, he hides behind his creations. He's not really all that. He just came in to Oz at a time they really needed something new and someone with a different point of view to help these people have a coup over their government. But then they ended up appointing him, and that was also a big mistake because he just becomes a tyrant. So all that to say, part 2 is a 17 to 20 year time skip, a very long time skip, and it's been about 17 years of the wizard ruling Oz. So this is technically the Oz's world now. So we are in what he's created. Elphaba, it is time for her to go to college. So this whole chapter is going to, this whole section, part 2, is going to be about her like 17 to like 23, and it goes in. So we first start off with our introduction to Glinda, and not Glinda as we know, Glinda the Good Witch, which is, you know, I have the rhinestones on and everything. This is actually for Nina Simone because it's Black History Month. Woo! Fitting, because as we know, Glinda is very sparkly, fairy like. We are introduced to Glinda, but for right now, she is going to be Glinda. I'll put it on the screen. And she is on a train on the way to a city called Shiz. Shiz, I promise you. She's on the way to attend Shiz University. And the only reason she's attending Shiz University, which she got a scholarship to because she actually had a really great like essay she did. She is going to Shiz because there are 2 other top colleges, and Shiz is pretty up there. It's a really good college, but she would have gotten into 2 others if they had allowed women. So again, this book is to highlight like sexism, racism, homophobia, like every subject you could think of. This book isn't perfect, but you can see the symbolisms to everything in this book. So it is very clear that there are still like prejudice to women actually getting an education. So the 2 top schools do not allow women in them. She gets accepted into Shiz, which is every woman's first choice, but every man's third, because again, the top 2 allow men. So if you don't get into the first 2, you can always go to Shiz. So yes, she is on a train on the way to Shiz, and she's just so excited. We learn pretty quickly that she's very self-absorbed, very shallow, because even in the first few words, it's like she's gonna do well in school. She's pretty, of course. Wealthy family. She is from a town called a region called the Gillikins. And that is where like more like human-like people are from. The closer you get to like the city in Emerald City, the more humans you will come across and see, because again, they have different like species and stuff here. And so Gillikins is one of those, and she is a type of like baroness. She's rich from where she's from, but when she gets to Shiz, she realizes there are people much richer than her. She doesn't get discouraged by this. She actually, like most rich people, make connections to build them up in society. So they're rich now, they could be richer. She has that outlook. She's on a train going to Shiz, and when they arrive, she is sitting across from a goat. Now, this is not any goat. This goat is dressed in more teacher attire, looks very studious. The goat has rounded glasses on. They have a vest on. And they talk, and they ask Linda if she will give the ticket master their ticket. And the ticket master asks the goat, can you pay for this ticket? How'd you get on here? And the goat's like, I paid for it. What's the issue? What did you want me to do? Go in a kennel? This is a talking goat. Now, another way the world building works, at least in Gregory Maguire's version of Oz, is there are animals and there are animals. Animals with a lowercase a are animals as we know them, but animals with an capital A are animals that have human consciousness and sentience. And those animals live as humans. So they go to work, they can teach, they can become students, they can have a job. Those are the animals with a capital A. And this goat is an animal with an A. Now, letting them have certain mobility, certain rights has started to become an issue because of the Wizard of Oz. He is not just an a-hole, he is a bigot as well, and thinks animals should be seen and not heard, no matter if they have human sentience or not. He believes they all should be on a farm somewhere, and he is starting to create bans on their animal mobility in Oz in general. And there are people who even back this up, which is really sad, because you can clearly see and hear that these animals with human sentience have a soul, have a life, and want to live one more than a simple animal on a farm. We get to know this goat as Dr. Dillamond, or Dillamond. I'll say Dillamond for right now. And Dr. Dillamond actually is the head biology teacher at Shiz University. So he will end up teaching Glinda, and he ends up accidentally calling her Glinda, and that's why later on she is going to be known as Glinda the Good Witch. She meets the goat. She's kind of a little scared because she's never really like been near an animal before, you know, with capital A. They part their ways because he's going to the university and she needs to be going somewhere else. Now, Glinda was traveling with someone known as her Amma Clutch. And an Amma is its own term, kind of meaning a service worker, a nanny of some sort, a chaperone, because we end up reading that the other wealthy girls showed up with their Ammas as well to Shiz University. And if you did not have an Amma, a sign of social status, if your parents had enough money to get you a chaperone or a nanny of some sort, girls go to college with their chaperones, their Ammas. So anytime I say Amma or Amma Clutch, that is her nanny chaperone type. And when she gets off this train with Amma Clutch, Amma steps on a nail and actually like it punctures through her foot and she has to go to the hospital. So Glinda shows up to Shiz herself, but later Amma Clutch will show back up to start doing her chaperone duties. And when Glinda gets inside of the university, they go to, you know, like new student orientation, and she automatically starts to make connections with the other wealthy girls, you know, starting to build her reputation, her repertoire. And later, the headmistress, whose name is Madame Morrible, hate this lady. You remember the headmistress from Harry Potter who was trying to ban everything and who was like that fake nice and had like really severe OCD? This is Madame Morrible, but like a tall, birdish looking woman. As in bird, the way they describe her, she reminds me of the teacher from Jimmy Neutron with the beak. Like they say she's super tall and skinny and she kind of speaks in a squawk. But this lady is like confident and wears like a fur coat. Like she's the headmistress from Harry Potter mixed with the lady who was over the girl witch school in Harry Potter, who had like the purple fur coat and everything. Them two, all them three mixed together make Madame Morrible. And she's quite terrible. She is one of the biggest supporters for the Wizard of Oz, which I've told you how bigoted and terrible he is. So if she's a supporter for him, Trump would love her. That's all I'm going to say. Madame Morrible, at the end of the girls getting together, you know, learning more about each other and the new student orientation, now starts to say the girls need to pair up themselves with their roommates. And you cannot pair up with somebody unless you have your Amma, because they are chaperones. Every girl needs their own Amma. Girls who do not have an Amma will stay after the orientation to be put with another girl, and an Amma will be assigned to both of them. Because Glinda did not show up with her Amma, she is considered one of those girls. And because she's as pretentious as I told you, she is in shallow. She's like, oh my God, how dare you? Like, I can't possibly like room with someone else who doesn't have an Amma. Like, don't you know what that means for their social status? What is this gonna do to me? So Madame Morrible, this is the only thing I like about her. She doesn't take Glinda's, she doesn't give her any like privilege. She's very much like, this is my school, I don't really care. So she's partnered up with none other than Elphaba. We meet 17-year-old Elphaba, and she is quiet, withdrawn. She wears the black type of garb and cloak that she wears in like the Oz and the Wicked and stuff, try to cover herself because she already gets enough attention because she's the only green person. Again, only elves are green in the Wizard of Oz, and she's only the green looking human. So she has to partner with her, and when her Alma shows up, she will watch after both of the girls. It's going to be important. Galinda makes up a lie, and she meets with the headmistress herself and that night, and she tells the headmistress that her Alma really can only watch after her because she suffers from terrible visions. She's almost going senile. She's so old. She really does not have the memory or the physical adeptness to watch after two girls. And this is a terrible lie, because why would you speak on someone like that? Like, Madame Morrible is still not taking none of her shiz, and she is like, okay, well, when she gets here, she can, she can go slow. Elphaba seems like she is no trouble. You'll be okay. So it doesn't, her okie doke does not work on Madame Morrible. That's the only thing I like about her, is she does not bow down to Galinda, even though everybody else does, because she's a teacher. She's like, you're a student. Why would I bend over for you? Galinda is not that wealthy to where she can make a headmistress do whatever she wants. Elphaba got there on a scholarship as well, because she is actually very bright. She's very good at science, philosophy, and stuff like that. Later on, some days later throughout the semester, Galinda is still able to make friends with the more prestigious girls and make connections. She does is she just basically plays damsel in distress. She wants the other girls to feel sorry for her that she has to bunk with this weirdo who is really skinny and, has green skin, and she's poor. So the girls really take pity on her, but they're also like, oh, you're rich like us, so like hang out with us. Anytime she's with the other girls, they are just making fun of Elphaba, and Elphaba doesn't really care. She had to grow up with very thick skin. She keeps her head down. She tries to get as little attention as possible, even though her green skin is gonna bring her so much. She doesn't want attention from like her actions because she already gets it from how she looks. Linda starts to realize she's not as smart as she thinks she is. She starts taking the classes there and figures out they're hard, and her pretty face and smiling at the professors is not going to get her any extra credit. So she's kind of flabbergasted that she has to start trying, which is really funny, actually, that she thought that was going to get her out of it. You'd be surprised what people think pretty privilege will get them out of. So later, Galinda gets in a type of fight with one of the richer girls, and she runs to a room, damsel in distress like. I will insert the pictures of the Disney princesses in all of their damsel in distress glory. They run and lay on their bed and cry until all damsel in distress like until the prince comes and gets them. And that's what she does. And Elphaba is just there reading a book very quietly, and she has nothing to do, so she focuses on Elphaba and doesn't mind her business. So she's like, what are you reading? And Elphaba's like, religious stuff, I guess. And she's like, why? She's like, I don't even really, the thing about Elphaba, which I really admired, she tells Galinda that even if she doesn't understand what she's reading, she would still like to read it. I know what other people think, even about a subject she doesn't know. And this is where we learn that Elphaba is really interested in learning the origins of evil, not necessarily like villainous type of does evil actually exist, kind of like she's kind of interested in nature over nurture. Did it already exist, or did it have to be nurtured to become what it is? And here's where we also learn that Elphaba does not believe she has a soul, which is really sad, actually. Like all villains, they need therapy. And again, like in part one, Elphaba, like I said, was born with like kind of a mature consciousness. As soon as she came out the womb, she knew that she could not have water on her skin or she would literally melt. Now, how did she know that? only an instinct of like an animal, you know, would know that. And so she comes out with very animal instincts more than a human child would. And I guess from this and the way she like grew up with, you know, like such pity, she does not believe she has a soul. She doesn't say this in like a sad way. She says this in just like a very matter of fact, like, oh, I don't have a soul. I don't have one. So I don't know what you mean by that. It's really sad, actually, every time she mentions it, but she doesn't sound like she has an issue with it. So I guess that's all that matters. She ends up debating with Galinda if evil really does exist, because that's what was in the book she was reading, was about like maybe the origins of evil, but from like a unionist perspective, again, their religion. Linda gets tired of that conversation and she's like, Elphaba, you have nothing but black. Please come try on one of my dresses to entertain me. And Elphaba, here's where we get the dynamic of how the relationship is going to be throughout the rest of the series. To shut Galinda up, Elphaba just does what she wants. She's like, girl, okay, I guess if that'll get you to shut up and let me read. And Galinda and even Alma Clutch are like, you actually look really pretty. And that was a nice little thing, because she actually meant it like genuinely. She was like, you actually look really nice. Just for the next chapter to show that she did mean it, but when she's with the other rich girls, she made up with them. But when she's with the other rich girls, she still talks crap about her and like makes fun of her. So we already get the sense that Galinda is very two-faced and will do anything to make sure she stays on like a good level of prestige. Later on in the semester, Madame Morrible hosts a poetry soiree, and she invites professors and students to mingle together, have tea, and just to recite the arts. And we need to bring that back. I want a good soiree. Like, Madame Morrible actually ends up reciting a poem herself. And in this poem is some really derogatory euphemisms about animals, especially animals with a capital A. And literally it ends with, the last line is, animals should be seen and not heard. And guess who's in the room? Dr. Dillamond, who is an animal. And if anything, he's actually the top professor of all three colleges, even the colleges the men go to. He is the top professor, and he was able to prove himself, and he is still like oppressed. Like, it's literally crazy. You could prove your worth so much to like society, the government, everything, and it could still come down to, oh, you're just an animal. So there are also other animal professors too, and he takes a stand. He's like, that was racist, that was speciesist, what you just said. And she was very much, everybody just is so sensitive. That's what she's giving. She starts to gaslight him and say it's just poetry, but she ends it with like, but I wouldn't say they're wrong or whatever. And he leaves. He's very much like, F you. Like, during the soiree, after Dr. Dillamond leaves, a boy comes up to Elphaba and Galinda, and his name is Boke. I want to say Bach. And he is actually a Munchkin. He's from Munchkinland, and he actually recognizes Elphaba because he was a part of the group of children who were the kids that she would play with to like build her tough skin. So they actually played together as a kid. And Elphaba is like, okay, hey, I guess. They left when she was like 3 or 4 to the Quadling Land to become missionaries. So they only knew each other for about like a year. And he's like, hey, how are you? You know, good to see you. He treats her normal because he's seen her before. But he specifically is going up to Galinda because he likes her. He's like, hey, nice to meet you. He's not trying to flirt yet, but he tries to use the fact that he knows Elphaba to like talk to them. In biology class with Dr. Dillamond, he actually tells the poem that Madame Morrible told them at the soiree. He tells that to the students and wants them to discuss what is so offensive about the poem. He really is trying to get them to think and to expand their minds. And it's just not happening. The brightest and best, and it's just not. But Elphaba is very engaged. Later, in a class that Madame Morrible just teaches on her free time, sometimes she'll host like extra credit classes herself. Elphaba goes to one of the classes and actually argues with her. She's actually like, you're not as smart as you think you are. You're very bigoted and offensive and terrible person. Like Elphaba, that's the thing about her. And she, again, that's very different because from the Elphaba we first meet, when we get to Shiz, she keeps her head down and she tries not to get noticed. But now she has a newfound passion for animal rights because they shouldn't have their rights taken away from them. And she becomes a very passionate person about this. So when it comes to the animal rights stuff, she's very loud and proud. But when she's like by herself and, you know, not with anybody, she's very to herself. Madame Morrible actually suggests to Galinda, because Galinda hasn't actually picked like what her major is, but she suggests that she goes into sorcery. So that's a big clue into later why we know her as Glinda the Good Witch and how she even got into sorcery. And again, I have to tell you about the world building. Magic in Oz is something that is normal, but depending on if you're a unionist, if you're a pagan person, or if you indulge in pleasure faith, depends on how you see magic. It's a very controversial topic, but if you can use it, they use it. One day, Bok is actually, he's studying. His friends want him to come out with them, and he doesn't because he wants to study, but also so he can sneak off to the neighboring school. And because he goes to one of the top male universities, and he sneaks over to the girls' school and tries to spy on Galinda. Just climbs on like a roof to look into like girls' rooms, and he falls. And guess who finds him? Elphaba. She actually is entertained by this. We actually end up finding that Elphaba is pretty like cynical and sarcastic. She has very like dry humor, and she actually finds entertainment in trying to like entertain Bok into thinking that Galinda will be with him. Not in an evil way. She just is like, she wants to see what happens. She's very experimental. She's just like, hell, I'll get you guys together. Let's see what happens. Galinda lets him know straight off the bat that she actually has no interest in him. She never will, because he's too short. Like, not even because she starts off with saying it's because they're from different classes of people. They're from different races of people. And the biggest thing is he is too short. She can't be with the short man. So she lets him know every chance she gets that there is never going to be anything between them because he is too dang short. So he is not taken off by this. He actually wants to make him try harder. And he's like, well, at least let us be friends. And she's like, I guess. So the next scene is summer break. And summer break, rich kids have like gone back to their houses or their summer houses for the semester. And Bok actually stays behind to work at a library during the summer, and he ends up meeting up with Elphaba, you know, who is staying there as well, and she lets him know that she is actually doing some research with Dr. Dillamond on if there are any scientific differences between humans and animals with a capital A. And if he can find out if there's a difference on a molecular level, he will present it to the court at Oz and have them decide if, because we are no different, you cannot put a ban on us or oppress us because we are the exact same. So he starts going into that research, and Elphaba helps him. And this is where we see even more her passion grow. She even explains she doesn't really understand it that well, like what he's talking about, but she is happy he's passionate about it and wants to help him, especially because she's very big on animal rights. So Dr. Dillamond wants to look from a molecular biological lens as well, if humans and animals are different, but also from a historical standpoint of like the first recording of animals, were they always able to talk? Did they always have human consciousness? And from a pagan and religious standpoint, like I said in the first video, the Kumbric witch, there's actually pagan mythology about the Kumbric witch actually breastfeeding a animal, and that's how the animals with the capital A got their consciousness, is they were fed a witch's milk, and that is how they gained human consciousness. So he's going to look at all those levels. Now, he is able to search on a biological level, but he also wants to know from the pagan and the unionist standpoint but their library in the girls' school does not have that information. But Bach tells Elphaba that his library does have that information, and he would be happy to help with that research. So Elphaba takes you. Later in the summer break, Elphaba, who is actually has the nickname Elfie now, so her and Bach have actually become some really good friends, and she is the nickname Elfie now. So Elfie actually receives a letter during the summer from Galinda telling her to visit her in her summer home. And at first Elphaba's not going to go because, again, unless it's about like animal rights, she doesn't really care about other people. She doesn't see the point. And again, she doesn't want to bring more attention to her green skin. So she very much was going to decline. But Bach, who, you know, is trying to apply pressure on Galinda now and get her to be his woman, tells her that hey, they should go so he could see her. And Elphaba's like, I guess, which I guess shows that she does care about Bach on some level, because she wants to see what happens between the two. But I also told you she's very like analytical and cynical, and she just wants to see what happens between them. And when they show up, Galinda is actually with the other popular girls, the rich girls. Their name is Shin, Mila, and Fafney, and show up, and Galinda is like, what are you doing here? She's not very happy to see her. Girls also freak out because there's a bunch of boys there now, and again, they're kind of conservative, so all the girls are like, I'm not decent, my ankles are out, like, girl, it's summer. And Elphaba is like, you sent me this letter, so what are you talking about? And one of the rich girls, Fafney, actually burst out laughing because she's the one who sent the letter as a prank. So they stay. She actually stays in her room the whole time, which is actually really sad, because that shows that she was hurt in some way, because she was actually starting to like make like friends and stuff, and they really just ruined it for her. Bach is actually able to get a little somewhere with Galinda during this trip, because he's actually she lets him kiss her, but later she still lets him know that that was just a moment of weakness, and she still is never going to get with him because he's too dang short. They go back for their fall semester of their first year, and Dr. Dillerman has actually been murdered. His throat was slit. Someone found him with his throat slit while he was making a very big breakthrough in his case against the animal bans, which is why he was probably killed. The person who finds Dr. Dillerman is Amma Clutch. She finds him, and when everybody finds her, she actually passes out. When she wakes up, she is quite senile. She is babbling. She's having hallucinations, and she has to be taken to a psych ward for the rest of the semester. And Galinda actually this is where we see a psychological turning point for her, because she believes she might have casted a spell on Amma Clutch for this to happen to her, because of the lies she told Madame Morrible in the beginning of the semester of Amma Clutch being so senile that she could only take care of Galinda, so she has to have her own room. She can't bunk with Elphaba. Remember that lie? She believes she might have ended up casting a type of spell on her. And the rest of the semester, she ends up becoming very closed off because she feels guilty about that. And because of Dr. Dillerman's death, to pay respects to him, Galinda decides to go by the name Glinda now, with just a GL, to pay respects to him, because that is what he called her when they first met. And this is how we get Glinda. Now, the Good Witch part, controversial, but that is why she's called Glinda now instead of Galinda. Because Amma Clutch is gone now, unfortunately, she is in the psych ward, and no one knows when she's going to get better. The girls now have no chaperone, and without a chaperone, they cannot go to school anymore. So Madame Morrible sends a letter to none other than Nanny, Elphaba's nanny, who took care of her mother and her. And Nanny is actually bringing someone very special, and that is Elphaba's little sister named Nessa Rose. So we also have to give props to Nanny, because how old is she now? She's taking care of Melinda. She's as old as she sounds. She's probably taking care of Melinda's mother, and now she's taking care of Elphaba, and now she took care of Elphaba's little sister. And we also find out that Elphaba has a little brother named Shell as well. And when we first meet Nessa Rose, Nessa was actually going to go to the school the next semester in the spring, but she shows up earlier because Nanny has to come and chaperone the girls now because Alma Clutch is in the infirmary. And when we meet Nessa Rose, we learn that she actually is born without her arms and with a walking disability. She is actually very beautiful. She came out looking human. So she actually was born looking human. She is described as having beautiful red hair and beautiful pale skin, and she's very skinny, but she does not have any arms, and she does have trouble walking, to where Nanny has to help her walk. Everyone falls in love with her instantly, especially Bach. He's giving very Romeo, where he was falling for one girl one day and the next he's with another one. And we actually end up learning that Nessa is very religious like her father. Why she's her father's favorite, because he picked up her sense of piety, loyalty to the unnamed God, where Elphaba is very unreligious. She makes it very known that just because she was raised by her priest father does not mean she shares those beliefs. This is where we learn what happened to the family when they were in Quadling Land. Well, again, like I said, it's kind of the dark lands. And when they went, there are ruby mines in Quadling. So even though it was the Darklands, they were sitting on a huge settlement of rubies, which the royal family before Oz came, the wizard came, was trying to build the yellow brick road through Quadling, and they were digging up the rubies, but they weren't as harsh as the wizard is currently trying to dig up the rubies and build a yellow brick road through there, because he's actually killing people to do that. And the Quadling population has actually been decimated due to the mining and killing of the people there. So yeah, he's actually a warlord and has committed huge genocide just for the sake of some rubies. Father used Elphaba as a toy in his missionary plan, because what he would do to the Quadling people, he would bring Elphaba with him when he would talk to the people, and he would basically say, look at this green girl. If the unnamed God can love her despite all of her hardships and her ugliness, he can love you too. And just like we've seen in religious uprisings or any of the sort, and when you push people against a wall hard enough, they're gonna push back. And because of the ruby mining at the time and the yellow brick road trying to be built there and people dying, this is the perfect time to make them religious, to become religious, because the religious piety, the loyalness you have, get you through those hard times. Believe that someone is watching you, protecting you, no matter what happens, or that everything happens for a reason, can help you get through a really tough time. He's able to get these people to convert, but he used Elphaba for the sake of that, and that's just really low. And we learn more of how shallow Frex is and a terrible father he is to Elphaba, because he used her as a ploy to be looked at as a punishment and not a gift of life. So that was really sad. Telling Glinda all of this brings them closer together. Elphaba, Glinda, and Nessa all have a debate about sorcery, because Glinda started to take the sorcery classes now to become a witch, the good witch. Replaced Dr. Dilliman. His name is Dr. Nidikit. The students can barely hear him. I guess he's a good enough teacher, but he doesn't engage with them like Dr. Dilliman did. New student shows up with literally blue rubies on his skin, and he paints some of himself blue. And this student's name is Fiyero, and Fiyero is going to be a important character, not anything too crazy, but he is very notable worthy. And Fiyero is known to be a type of person called a Winky. I don't really know what those are, but apparently they can have rubies on their skin. Apparently they can have jewels, because those jewels are actually his skin. And he comes in with very, tribal looking painting, and these people are actually a nomadic type of people, and he's the prince of them, the prince of a nomadic tribe called the Ajirki people. And he is going to school to just basically learn how to rule, and a lot of like ruling class send their kids to get education. He comes to biology class dressed to the nine, and obviously he makes a statement, but also Dr. Nidakit was performing a spell at the time, and the spell almost kills him. So it was very scary for him. Later, the other students are talking about him, Elphie and Bach and his group of friends, and Averick, who is the pretentious a-hole in this whole group, very much says that it is really, he is glad he doesn't have skin like SHIT like Fiyero does. And as someone with brown skin, I've heard that if you're gonna be racist, like, can you come up with something else? Honestly. And Elphaba lets him know, especially because she has green skin, she lets him know, you're an a-hole and you need to go. Brings in an animal to the class, a baby lion cub in a cage, and he wants to torture it with lightning to see if it responds in the way of a regular animal or an animal with a capital A that has human sentience. Will it talk? Will it stand up on its hind legs and try to get out of the cage like a human would using its opposable thumbs? And automatically all of the students are like, what in the hell is wrong with you? Especially because the class used to be taught by an animal. Like, how tone deaf could you be? Later, two girls actually in the class actually get together to get the lion cub out of the classroom. So that was really nice. That was actually a good part of the book, where they all stand up for this little lion cub and get him out of the classroom from literally being tortured by the teacher. So learn that he is officially over Glinda, specifically because he liked how she liked herself. He liked how the attention was always on her. And this just really shows that, like, ladies, when you act like you are the prize, people are going to treat you like it. Because he stops liking her because, like I said, she changes, and she very much is not as bright and glittery and egotistical as she used to be. But that is because she's harboring so much guilt for Amma Clutch's situation where she is in the infirmary. And Bach doesn't know that, but what can he do? The fantasy of being with her has now gone blank. And now he has a crush on Nessa Rose, but it's nothing big. But he starts to actually notice that he is not in love with Glinda anymore. But that's genuinely because she doesn't seem like she's in love with herself anymore. Later, Nessa Rose and Elphie have been called to Madame Orrible's office, and she has some mail from their father, Frex. And here's where we get another terrible instance of where Frex just completely treats Elphaba like crap, because he sends a letter, but it's only to Nessa Rose. He sends a present, and it's only for Nessa Rose. The only reason Elphie is in the room is because she needed to open the letter and the box of the present for Nessa. And in the box is a box of ruby slippers. Dun, dun, dun. And he says he made the ruby slippers himself. The ruby slippers were made from the ruby settlement that the Quadling people lived on. And he says in the letter, my darling, I know you can't walk, but hopefully, and hope, I know you can't walk and you don't have arms, but you are my favorite, you are my pet, and I hope these shoes can make you feel good as my semester. Glinda and Elphaba are called to Madame Morrible's office, and she tells them that Amma Clutch is about to die in the infirmary and that they should go see her, and they have permission to go see her and leave school and go do that. So as they go and see her, obviously Glinda breaks out crying because she's like, this is all my fault. Like, I must have did this to you. Especially because she's learning sorcery. She thinks she might have used a power she doesn't even know she has yet. And Elphaba lets her know that don't make Amma Clutch's death about you. This is about her dying. We need to be celebrating her life, which was actually really good of Elphaba to like bring it back. So it's also like, you are a sorceress now. You've learned enough. Use a spell and see if you can bring her back from where she is mentally. And she is able to cast a spell, and Amma Clutch is now coherent. She is now back to normal, but she is still also about to die. And before she dies, Elphaba gets to the point. She like, do you know who killed Dr. Dilliman? Because again, she's the one who found him. And right after she found him, she all of a sudden went crazy. So she asked her, do you know who killed Dr. Dilliman? And Amma Clutch says that, I have to go back. Madame Morrible has a type of minion named Gromatic, and it is a mechanical crab that kind of acts as her butler. It does her bidding. And through the wizard and his technological advances, he's actually been able to make TikTok people. So yes, this is normal in society now to have like a type of like robot, but by clockwork. And she has one named Gromatic who is a crab, is in a crab shape. And Amma Clutch says when she arrived to see Dr. Dilliman, because she just heard something weird one night through the school, and went to the science lab. And when she went to the science lab, she saw Gromatic slit his throat. And then all of a sudden, that's when she blacked out. So obviously, if the Gromatic works for Madame Morrible, it must have been Madame Morrible, especially because she is very loyal to the wizard, who thinks animals should be seen and not heard. They know that information, but they also know that they should not let Madame Morrible know that they know. So yeah, she dies and they hold a funeral for her. So R.I.P. Amma Clutch. Madame Morrible calls Elphaba, Nessa Rose, and Glinda into her office. I swear, Madame Morrible she ain't got nothing to do all day but call people in her office. But I guess that is a headmistress's job. But she calls the girls into her office and tells them she has cast a spell on them. Whatever she's about to tell them cannot leave this room, and if they do try to talk about it, they will become severely ill. Admitting that she does work for the wizard. And she never admits to killing Dr. Dilliman herself, but she does admit that Gromatic basically did it. Gromatic did it. But if Gromatic works for her, obviously it's her. So she admits that she works for the wizard, and she has been assigned with recruiting people to go to different parts of Oz, people to become ambassadors of peace in different regions of Oz that have people who are basically rioting against the wizard. So basically she's sending them off to be dictators, and to rule over these people with an iron fist in the name of the wizard. She tells the girls that where they would each be going. She says that Glinda would go back to Gillikin and rule with a type of baron. She would still be rich and pretty, but she would need to have control over the population if ever a coup tries to rise against the wizard. She tells Elphie that she will rule over Munchkinland because, again, her Elphie's mother's parents ruled over basically the whole of Munchkin Land, and Elphaba is next in line because her mother did not take their place. So she's like, you might as well go rule over Munchkin Land. She tells Nessa Rose that she will rule over Quadling because Nessa Rose actually grew up there. She tells the girls that they have till next semester to give her their answer if they decide to be ambassadors for peace. And if they choose to say no, they can easily be replaced. So essentially she's saying, you're doing what I'm saying you're doing, and if you say no, you'll die. And I can just pick some other girl. So we learn that after this meeting, when the girls, walk out all flabbergasted and wondering if she really did even cast a spell on them, Linda and Nessa Rose are so dramatic and they both faint. Yeah, and this is still on the day of Alma Clutch's funeral. I kid you not. Madame Morrible did not waste any time. She said, okay, Dillerman's dead. Alma Clutch is dead. You three are being recruited. You have till next semester or you die. I cast a spell on you to where you can't tell anybody this. Like, she wasted no time. I have to give her credit for staying on schedule. To meet their friends at a pub, to have some, food, how people do after a funeral. And the boys say they want to go somewhere called the Philosophy Club, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Everybody's trying to coerce them into going to the Philosophy Club. Says they are going to go see the wizard. And Glinda's like, huh? What? And I don't know what Elphaba thinks she's about to do by talking to the man who supposedly got Dr. Dillerman killed, and is now trying to get them to work for him. But she's trying something. I have to give her credit for trying. It takes them about a week and a half to get there, and then it takes them 5 days to see the wizard. Now, before they leave, we have to talk about the Philosophy Club. And the Philosophy Club is kind of known as a sex club. Yeah, it's known as some type of like BDSM type of club. And like I said, the girls decide not to go, but Bach, Averick, and Copin Tibbet, his friends, decide to go. And there are animals. So again, animals with human, which is why this book was banned at one point, because it said it encouraged bestiality because the animals were also participating in the BDSM. Hilarious. I read the little paragraph and they're just saying like a tiger got whipped or the tiger whipped a human, but it's like, what? But apparently what they saw in that in the Philosophy Club messed some of them up later in their adult lives. So in your noggin. Later, while Glinda and Elfie are going to Oz and Nessa's at home, the boys go to the Philosophy Club and their lives kind of change after. We get to Emerald City, which is where the wizard is. It's very close to Shiz, but by train it's very it's long. And as soon as the girls get there, they notice, one, that there are no animals. Wonder why, Mr. Oz, can you explain? And there are also a lot of homeless people laying around. High lifestyle, this luxury lifestyle. But actually on the ground, everyday people are struggling to survive. And Elphaba's always known this, but Glinda's really getting a culture shock because, again, she's grown up rich. They are told they only have 5 minutes to speak, and they have 2 minutes to get there. So they wait in this dark room, and it's very much like the scene in Wizard of Oz where it's dark, and then the wizard is talking through a mechanical type of robot thing. Why a coup is probably about to happen, because he helped the people get the royalists out, but now the people are realizing he's just like the royalists, and they want him gone. So the wizard actually speaks to them through a skeleton type of robot thing, and Elphaba automatically gives him the business. She is like, we were sent by Madame Morrible, and he was like, oh, okay, so I guess he knows her. She's not just some henchman he doesn't know. He's like, why? They don't tell him because, again, they can't because of the spell she cast on them. But also, Elphaba, remember I said I didn't really understand why she would go see the wizard if he's their enemy now because of what he's done to animals. But she actually goes to confront him about his hate for animals and what that has done to Dr. Dillerman, who passed. So while she's mentioning this and is like, aren't you like embarrassed to be such a bigot, basically, he honestly answers like every Trump supporter I've ever heard. And he's very much like, why would I care? The girls leave. They don't really get anything. But while Glinda is getting back on the train to go back to Shiz, Elphie tells her she's not getting on that train and she's actually leaving, and this is where they say goodbye. And of course Glinda is like, what are you talking about? Elphie lets her know she can't go back to that school, knowing that it is just a front for recruiting people to work for the wizard and keep basically fascism alive. And this is the end of her college days, and we are now going to do a 3 to 5 year time skip when she is 23 years old. That is going to be the end of this video. Because I missed posting yesterday, I want to get this done quickly because there's so many parts and I want to get to other books, So I think I'm going to post this whole week. I think I'm going to post every other day. So today's Thursday, I'll post Saturday, and then I'll post one Monday, and then we should be done with this series. So watch out for that. Go check out part 1 if you haven't, and go check out my other videos, also my shorts, and follow me on Instagram. And thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think about the series so far down below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a good day.